My name is Caroline. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Portland with my 8-year-old son, Theo. This Christmas, I thought it would be like every other year. My mother's house filled with the smell of cinnamon rolls baking, Theo running around with his cousins, the sound of carols playing softly in the background. But instead, what I received was a text message that made my hands shake as I read it. Before we continue, shout out your location in the comments. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. Our community is growing and tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. Caroline, this year we're keeping Christmas small. Just your brother's family. Hope you understand. 15 words. That's all it took to make me feel like I was 8 years old again, standing outside my mother's bedroom door, listening to her brag about my brother to her friends while I waited silently for her to notice me. Only this time, it wasn't just me being pushed aside. It was my son too. My Theo, who had spent the last 3 weeks making paper snowflakes to hang at Grandma's house. Who had carefully colored a Christmas card with wobbly letters that said, "I love you Grandma Dorothy," in red crayon. I stared at that message for what felt like an hour, though it was probably only minutes. Then I looked over at Theo, who was sitting on the living room floor, arranging his toy cars in a perfect line. He looked up at me with those bright hazel eyes and asked, "Mama, how many days until we go to Grandma's?" I couldn't answer him. Not right away. Have you ever been excluded by your own family? Made to feel like you and your child weren't important enough to deserve a seat at the table? If you have, leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from, so I know I'm not alone in this. The exclusion wasn't new. It was just the latest chapter in a story that had been written long before Theo was even born. I remember it clearly, even from when I was young. My life was always measured against the golden shadow of my older brother, Ryan. In my mother's eyes, Ryan could do no wrong. He was charming, athletic, successful, everything she wanted to display to the world. I, on the other hand, was often introduced with a dismissive wave of the hand. "This is Caroline, Ryan's little sister." That sentence became my identity. Not Caroline the artist. Not Caroline who won the state poetry competition in high school. Just Ryan's little sister. The holidays were especially painful. I still remember one Christmas when I was 12. The tree was decorated beautifully, lights twinkling across our old house in Seattle, and presents stacked high underneath. Ryan got a new mountain bike, shiny red with chrome handlebars. My mother kissed his forehead and said, "You've worked so hard this year, sweetheart. You deserve this." I sat there waiting, watching as everyone opened their gifts one by one. When the last piece of wrapping paper was torn away, I realized there was nothing with my name on it. My mother looked uncomfortable when she noticed me staring at the empty space under the tree. "You're getting older now, Caroline. We thought you'd prefer something practical. We put money toward your college fund instead." Ryan got a bike. I got a deposit slip I'd never see. But it wasn't just about gifts. It was about everything. When Ryan made the varsity basketball team, my mother threw a party and invited half the neighborhood. When I won first place in the regional art show, she said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to folding laundry. This story took hours to research and craft, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe would truly make our day. Now, let's get back to it. When Ryan got accepted to Yale, she had custom t-shirts made that said, "Yale Mom," and wore them everywhere. When I got a full scholarship to the Rhode Island School of Design, one of the best art schools in the country, she said, "That's so far away. Why couldn't you just go to community college here like normal people?" The pattern continued into adulthood. When Ryan got married, it was a 3-day celebration with 200 guests. When I got married, my mother complained the entire time about the venue being too artsy and hard to find. And then came Theo. When I got pregnant, I thought maybe, finally, becoming a mother myself would change things. That my mother would see me differently, would soften, would want to be part of my son's life in a meaningful way. For a brief moment, she did. When Theo was born, she came to the hospital, held him, took photos. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the moment we become close. But it didn't last. When Ryan and his wife had their first child 2 years later, a daughter named Lily, everything shifted back. Suddenly, my mother was at Ryan's house every weekend. She babysat Lily twice a week. She threw elaborate birthday parties for her. She posted endless photos on Facebook with captions like, "My precious granddaughter," and "Grandma's little angel." Theo's birthdays? She'd show up for an hour, sometimes less, always with an excuse about needing to be somewhere else. She missed his school plays, his baseball games, his art shows at school. Every time I invited her to something important in Theo's life, she had a reason why she couldn't make it. But she never missed anything for Lily. I watched my son's face fall every time Grandma Dorothy left early or didn't show up at all. I watched him try harder to get her attention, making her drawings, picking dandelions for her from the park, practicing songs to sing to her. And I watched her barely notice. The rejection I had learned to swallow as a child was now being served to my son, and that was something I couldn't accept silently anymore. Last Thanksgiving, Theo asked her, "Grandma, do you love me as much as you love Lily?" My mother laughed it off. "Of course, sweetheart. Don't be silly." But Theo looked at me with those knowing eyes. Even at 8 years old, he could feel the truth. And now, staring at that text message excluding us from Christmas, all of those moments came flooding back. The forgotten birthdays. The missed milestones. The constant feeling of being second best, second thought, second place. But this time, something was different. This time, I wasn't going to sit in my apartment and pretend it didn't hurt. I wasn't going to explain to my son why Grandma didn't want us there. I wasn't going to teach him that it's okay to accept being treated as less than. This time, I had something my mother knew nothing about. Something I'd been building quietly for the last 2 years. Something that would change everything. I picked up my phone, opened a new message, and typed, "You're right, Mom. Small is better. Enjoy your dinner." Then I opened my contacts and started scrolling. Because if my mother didn't want us at her table, I was going to build one of my own. And I was going to invite everyone who had ever felt the sting of being Ryan's shadow, of being the one left outside looking in. This Christmas, Theo and I wouldn't be forgotten. We'd be celebrating. And everyone who'd ever been pushed aside by Dorothy Miller would finally have a place where they truly belonged. Leaving Seattle for Portland 7 years ago was the hardest and best decision I ever made. After my divorce from Theo's father, I knew I needed a fresh start, somewhere far enough from my mother's constant comparisons but close enough that Theo could still have some connection to family, even if that connection was thin and painful. On my first day in Portland, I stood in the doorway of a tiny studio apartment in the Selwood neighborhood, Theo just a year old, balanced on my hip. The paint was peeling, the floors creaked with every step, and the kitchen was barely big enough to turn around in. But it was mine. Ours. And for the first time in my life, no one was there to tell me I wasn't measuring up. My mother had made her opinion clear when I told her I was moving. Portland? That's so far away, Caroline. And for what? Some artistic dream? Ryan would never do something so impractical. He's building a real career here. Ryan, of course, had stayed in Seattle, taking a prestigious position at a tech firm, buying a house 3 streets away from my mother. Perfect Ryan, always within reach, always available for Sunday dinners and last-minute babysitting drop-offs. I had no safety net. The divorce settlement was minimal, Theo's father was inconsistent with child support, and I was drowning in student loans from art school. But I had my hands, my eyes, and a stubborn refusal to prove my mother right. Those first 2 years in Portland were brutal. I worked 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. During the day, I was a barista at a coffee shop in downtown Portland, steaming milk and taking orders from business people who barely looked at me. In the evenings, I worked as a server at a restaurant in the Pearl District, my feet aching by the time I got home at 11. And late at night, after Theo was asleep, I freelanced as a graphic designer, taking any job I could find on freelancing websites, $50 here, $100 there, designing logos for startups and flyers for local bands. I remember nights when dinner was a shared box of macaroni and cheese, the cheap kind that cost 79 cents. Nights when I cried in the bathroom so Theo wouldn't hear, terrified that I'd made a terrible mistake, that my mother was right, that I was failing. There were times I called my mother, desperate, hoping she'd offer to help, or at least offer some encouragement. But every conversation ended the same way. Well, if you had stayed here, you wouldn't be struggling so much. Ryan's doing so well. Did I tell you he just got promoted? They're looking at a bigger house now. I stopped calling. But in that struggle, something unexpected happened. I found my voice as an artist. Late at night, exhausted from work, I would sit at my small desk by the window and paint. Not for clients, not for money, just for me. Watercolors of the Willamette River at dawn. Oil paintings of the old buildings in northwest Portland. Sketches of Theo sleeping, his small face peaceful against his pillow. One night, a friend convinced me to display a few pieces at a local art market in Hawthorne. I was terrified. Who would want to buy art from an exhausted single mom with paint under her fingernails? But I went, setting up a small booth with 8 paintings. By the end of the day, I'd sold 6. A woman named Judith, who owned a boutique gallery in the Alberta Arts District, stopped by my booth just as I was packing up. She studied my paintings for a long time, not saying anything, just looking. Then she handed me her card. These have something. Raw, honest. Come by my gallery next week. I almost didn't go. Imposter syndrome whispered that I wasn't good enough, that she'd made a mistake. But I went, carrying a portfolio of my best work, my hands shaking as I pushed open the gallery door. Judith offered me a show. A small one, just a corner of the gallery, but it was mine. My first real exhibition. I called my mother to tell her, my heart pounding with the hope that maybe, finally, she'd be proud. That's nice, honey. Ryan just closed a huge deal at work. 6 figures. We're all going out to celebrate this weekend. The exhibition opened on a rainy Thursday evening in October. I stood in that corner of the gallery, watching strangers look at my work, really look at it. 3 paintings sold that night. Then 5 more over the next 2 weeks. But it wasn't the sales that mattered most. It was the reviews. A local art blogger wrote about my work, calling it hauntingly intimate and a fresh voice in Portland's art scene. The Portland Monthly magazine featured me in a short article about emerging artists to watch. I sent the article to my mother. She texted back, "Good for you. Lily just started dance classes. She's so talented." I stopped expecting her approval. And in that release, something shifted. Over the next 3 years, my career slowly, quietly, began to build. More galleries wanted my work. I started getting commissions, people willing to pay real money for custom pieces. A tech company hired me to create a series of paintings for their new office building. A hotel in downtown Portland commissioned a large-scale piece for their lobby. I was careful with every dollar I made. I paid off my credit cards first, then started saving. I moved Theo and me into a better apartment, a 2-bedroom in the Richmond neighborhood with a small backyard where he could play. I bought him new clothes instead of thrift store hand-me-downs. I enrolled him in the art classes he'd been begging for. But I told no one in my family about any of it. When my mother asked what I was doing, I kept it vague. Oh, still doing some art stuff. Getting by. I didn't want her to know. Didn't want to give her the opportunity to minimize it, to compare it to Ryan's latest achievement, to find some way to make it about him instead of me. Then came the breakthrough I never saw coming. A collector from California, a woman named Patricia Lowe who owned a chain of high-end hotels, saw my work at Judith's gallery. She reached out, asking if I'd be interested in creating a series of paintings for her newest hotel, a luxury property opening in Bend, Oregon. The commission was for 20 pieces. The payment? $180,000. I stared at the contract for 3 days, convinced there was a mistake, that she'd meant $18,000 and added an extra zero. But when I called to confirm, Patricia laughed warmly. Caroline, your work is worth every penny. I've been collecting art for 20 years. This is the real deal. The contract was signed in January, 2 years ago. I worked on those paintings for 8 months, pouring everything into them. Landscapes of Oregon, abstract pieces inspired by the high desert, intimate portraits of anonymous faces. When the series was complete and installed in the hotel, Patricia invited me to the opening. Standing in that lobby, watching wealthy guests admire my work, I felt something I'd never felt before, pride that didn't need anyone else's approval. Patricia introduced me to other collectors that night. By the time I left, I had 3 more commissions lined up. My calendar was full for the next year. The money changed everything. I paid off my student loans completely. I bought a modest but beautiful house in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, a 1920s craftsman with a studio in the converted attic where I could paint without interruption. I set up a college fund for Theo that would cover 4 years at any school he wanted. And then I bought something I never told anyone about. A property. Not in Portland, but 2 hours south in the Willamette Valley, near a small town called Harmony Ridge. It was an old farmhouse on 15 acres, surrounded by oak trees and rolling hills, with a view of the distant mountains. The property had been abandoned for years, the house in desperate need of renovation, but I saw its potential immediately. I spent $320,000 buying and renovating it over the course of a year. I hired local contractors, worked with an architect to restore the farmhouse while adding modern touches. Wide plank floors, a kitchen with a massive island made from reclaimed wood, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the valley, 4 bedrooms each with their own fireplace, and a great room with exposed beams and a stone fireplace tall enough to walk into. Outside, I had a wraparound porch built, perfect for summer evenings. I restored the old barn, turning it into a guest house. I planted a garden, apple trees, a small vineyard. It became my secret haven. The place I'd go with Theo on weekends, where we'd hike the property, paint together in the studio I'd built in the barn, cook meals in that beautiful kitchen, and sleep with the windows open, listening to the sound of crickets. I never posted about it on social media. Never mentioned it to my mother or Ryan. It was mine, completely separate from the family that had spent my entire life making me feel small. During family phone calls, when my mother would brag about Ryan's new promotion or the vacation home he'd bought in Whistler, I'd simply say, "That's wonderful, Mom," while standing in my own kitchen, looking out at my own land, knowing I'd built something just as impressive. More impressive, because I'd done it without anyone's help, without anyone's approval. Last Christmas, when I visited my mother's house, she spent the entire dinner talking about Ryan's success. How he'd been featured in Seattle Business Magazine. How his company had gone public. How proud she was. When I tried to mention that I'd just had a piece acquired by the Portland Art Museum, she waved her hand dismissively. "That's nice, dear. Oh, did I tell you Ryan's thinking about running for city council? Wouldn't that be something?" I smiled, nodded, and thought about the farmhouse waiting for me in Harmony Ridge. The place where I was building a life that had nothing to do with being Ryan's little sister. And now, holding that text message excluding Theo and me from Christmas, I realized something. That farmhouse wasn't just my haven anymore. It was about to become the stage for something my mother never saw coming. I had built my own table. Now it was time to fill the seats with people who actually wanted to be there. The moment I read my mother's text, something crystallized in my mind. I needed to know if this exclusion was truly about keeping it small, or if it was another chapter in the same old story where Ryan's family mattered and mine didn't. I scrolled through my contacts and stopped at my cousin Jessica. She lived in Tacoma with her husband and 2 kids, and unlike the rest of the family, she'd always been honest with me, sometimes brutally so. We'd grown up more like sisters than cousins, both of us living in Ryan's shadow, though her version came from her own older brother, my Uncle Paul's golden child. I pressed call, my heart hammering as the phone rang. "Caroline?" Jessica answered on the second ring, surprise evident in her voice. "Everything okay?" I took a breath. "Jess, did you get an invitation to Mom's Christmas dinner this year?" There was a pause, then a bitter laugh that told me everything I needed to know. Your mom sent a text to my mom last week. Said they were doing immediate family only this year, which apparently means just Ryan, Ashley, and Lily. My mom was furious. We've been going to Dorothy's Christmas dinner for 23 years. My chest tightened, but I needed to hear more. So it's not just me? Not even close, Jessica said, her voice dropping. I talked to Aunt Linda yesterday. She wasn't invited either. Neither was Uncle Paul or his family. Your mom basically uninvited everyone except Ryan's perfect little nuclear family. Aunt Linda said she tried calling Dorothy to ask what was going on, and your mom gave some excuse about wanting a quiet, intimate holiday. I sank into my kitchen chair, staring out the window at the gray Portland sky. So it wasn't about intimacy. It was about worship. A Christmas entirely devoted to Ryan, Ashley, and their precious Lily, with no one around to dilute the spotlight. Caroline? Jessica's voice pulled me back. You still there? Yeah, I said quietly. I'm here. Look, I know this hurts. It's Dorothy being Dorothy. But honestly, I'm almost relieved. I'm exhausted from watching her fawn over Ryan while the rest of us might as well be furniture. An idea sparked in my mind, small at first, then growing brighter with each passing second. Jess, what if we didn't sit home feeling rejected? What if we had our own Christmas? What do you mean? I stood up, pacing my kitchen, the words tumbling out faster now. I have a place. A farmhouse in Harmony Ridge, down in the Willamette Valley. It's beautiful, plenty of space. What if I hosted Christmas there? Everyone who got uninvited, everyone who's tired of being treated like they don't matter, we could all celebrate together. Jessica was quiet for a moment, then her voice came back, stronger, excited. You're serious? Completely serious. I'll handle everything. Food, decorations, all of it. Just bring yourselves. Caroline, Jessica said, and I could hear her smiling through the phone. That sounds perfect. Let me call my mom right now. If you're really doing this, we're in. The phone call with Jessica was just the beginning. Over the next 2 hours, I made call after call, my fingers flying across my phone screen, reaching out to every family member who'd been cast aside. Aunt Linda answered immediately when I called. She was my mother's younger sister, always kind to me growing up but often overshadowed by my mother's louder personality. When I explained what I was planning, she actually started crying. Caroline, honey, I can't tell you how much this means. Your Uncle George and I were planning to spend Christmas alone for the first time in decades. The thought of it was breaking my heart. You won't be alone, I told her firmly. Pack your bags. Bring Uncle George. You're coming to Harmony Ridge. Uncle Paul was next. My mother's older brother had always been quiet, steady, the one who showed up to every family event but rarely spoke unless spoken to. His son David had struggled with addiction for years, finally getting clean 3 years ago, and I knew my mother had judged them harshly for it. An alternative Christmas? Uncle Paul's gruff voice softened. Without Dorothy's commentary on everything? Count us in. David's been clean for 3 years and your mother still looks at him like he's about to steal the silverware. It'll be good for him to be somewhere he's actually welcome. My cousin Natalie, Aunt Linda's daughter, practically shouted into the phone when I told her. Yes. Oh my God, yes. I have been dreading explaining to my kids why Grandma Dorothy didn't want them at Christmas. This is perfect, Caroline. What can I bring? One by one, the confirmations came flooding in. Jessica and her family. Aunt Linda and Uncle George. Uncle Paul, his wife Denise, and their son David. Natalie, her husband, and their 3 kids. Even my elderly Aunt Ruth, my mother's aunt who lived in a retirement community in Eugene, said she'd make the drive if someone could pick her up. Within 3 hours, I had a list of 19 people who would be coming to Harmony Ridge for Christmas. 19 people who'd been pushed aside, forgotten, or judged by my mother over the years. But I wasn't done yet. There was one more person I needed to call. Someone whose voice I needed to hear validate everything I was feeling. My father. My parents had divorced when I was 16, and my father had moved to Astoria, remarrying a kind woman named Helen who owned a bookstore there. My mother had poisoned his relationship with Ryan, but Dad and I had stayed close. He was the one who came to my art shows, who sent Theo birthday cards with $20 bills inside, who actually listened when I talked. "Sweetheart," Dad said when I explained what had happened. "I'm not surprised, but I'm sorry. Your mother has always had a way of making people feel invisible when they don't fit her narrative." "Will you come?" I asked. "You and Helen?" "I know it's far, but..." "We'll be there," he said without hesitation. "Helen's been wanting to meet more of your family anyway." "And Caroline? I'm proud of you. For not sitting quietly this time. For building something better." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, filling a space that had been cold for too long. That evening, after Theo was asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and began planning. This wasn't just going to be a thrown-together dinner. This was going to be the Christmas my family deserved, the one they'd never gotten under my mother's roof. I called a catering company in Harmony Ridge that specialized in farm-to-table meals. The owner, a woman named Simone, listened to my story and immediately offered to help. "I'll bring my whole team," Simone said warmly. "Roasted prime rib, garlic herb mashed potatoes, roasted root vegetables from the local farms, fresh rolls, 3 kinds of pie. And for the kids, I'll make hot cocoa with homemade marshmallows." This is exactly the kind of event I love to be part of. I hired a local woman who did holiday decorating, and we spent 2 days transforming the farmhouse into a winter wonderland. A 12-foot Douglas fir stood in the great room, decorated with white lights and handmade ornaments I'd collected over the years. We strung garland along the staircase, placed wreaths on every door, and hung stockings along the massive stone fireplace, each one hand-embroidered with a family member's name. In each of the 4 bedrooms, I set up welcoming spaces. For Aunt Ruth, I placed a stack of large-print mystery novels on the nightstand, knowing she loved them. For Jessica's kids, I bought craft supplies and left them in their room with a note saying, "Art Studio, create whatever you want." For Uncle Paul and Denise, I left a bottle of the Oregon Pinot Noir they'd mentioned loving years ago. I wanted everyone who walked into this house to feel one thing, that they were seen, remembered, and valued. The dining table, a massive piece of reclaimed wood that could seat 20, was set with cream-colored linens, simple white dishes, and mason jars filled with evergreen branches and red berries. No fancy china, no stuffy formality. Just warmth and authenticity. Outside, I arranged for a local musician to come play guitar on the porch during cocktail hour. I set up a fire pit in the backyard where people could roast marshmallows and make s'mores. In the barn-turned guest house, I created a kids' zone with board games, puzzles, and a movie projector. Every detail mattered because every person mattered. That was the difference between this Christmas and every single one at my mother's house. This wasn't about performing perfection or showcasing one family's achievements. This was about gathering people who'd been made to feel less than and showing them they were enough exactly as they were. 3 days before Christmas, I posted a single photo in our extended family group chat. Just a picture of the farmhouse's front porch, decorated with lights and garland, with the caption, "Christmas at Harmony Ridge. Everyone's invited." December 25th, 2 p.m. I didn't tag my mother. Didn't need to. I knew someone would make sure she saw it. Within minutes, my phone exploded with responses. Heart emojis, excited messages, people asking what they could bring. Jessica sent a selfie of her kids holding a sign that said, "We can't wait." And then, 20 minutes later, my phone rang. My mother's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before answering, my voice calm and steady. "Hi, Mom. Caroline." Her voice was tight, controlled, the way it always got when she was angry but trying not to show it. "I saw your post in the family chat. What exactly is going on?" "I'm hosting Christmas," I said simply. "Since you said you were keeping yours small, I thought the rest of the family might want somewhere to celebrate together." This is incredibly inappropriate. You're dividing the family. I almost laughed. I'm not dividing anyone, Mom. I'm gathering the people you excluded. I didn't exclude anyone. I simply wanted an intimate holiday with my son and his family. And your daughter? I asked quietly. And your grandson? We're not part of your idea of family? There was a pause, and I could practically hear her recalibrating. Caroline, you're being dramatic. I just thought. It doesn't matter what you thought, I interrupted, my voice still calm but firm. I've made other plans. Enjoy your intimate dinner with Ryan. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking slightly but my heart steady. For the first time in my life, I'd set a boundary and held it. Theo appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Mama? Who was that? I knelt down and pulled him into a hug. Just Grandma. Everything's okay. Are we still going to have Christmas? He asked, his voice small. I pulled back and looked into his eyes. Buddy, we're going to have the best Christmas you've ever had. I promise. And for the first time, I knew it was true. Christmas morning arrived with a blanket of fresh snow covering Harmony Ridge, something rare for the Willamette Valley. I stood at the kitchen window watching the white landscape glitter in the early sunlight, a cup of coffee warming my hands. Theo was still asleep upstairs, and the house was silent except for the crackling fire I'd started an hour earlier. My phone sat on the counter, and I'd been watching it all morning. 6 missed calls from my mother since last night. 4 text messages I hadn't opened. And then, just as I was about to set the phone down, it buzzed again. A text from Ryan. Really classy move, sis. Stealing Christmas because you're jealous. Hope you're proud of yourself. I stared at those words, reading them twice, 3 times. The old Caroline would have felt that familiar twist in her stomach, would have questioned herself, wondered if maybe she was being petty or vindictive. But standing in the farmhouse I'd bought with money I'd earned, planning a Christmas for people I genuinely wanted to celebrate with, I felt nothing but clarity. I typed back, not stealing anything. Building something better. Merry Christmas, Ryan. I set the phone face down and went to wake Theo. By noon, Simone and her catering team had arrived, transforming the kitchen into a command center of incredible smells. The prime rib was in the oven, potatoes were being whipped with butter and cream, and 3 pies sat cooling on the counter. The musician, a young man named Cole who played folk guitar, was setting up on the front porch, tuning his strings. The first car pulled up the long gravel driveway at 1:30. Jessica and her family tumbled out, her 2 kids immediately running toward the house, their eyes wide as they took in the snow-covered property. Caroline. Jessica threw her arms around me, squeezing tight. This place is incredible. Why have you been hiding it? I smiled, watching her kids already making snow angels in the front yard. I wasn't hiding it. I was protecting it. More cars began arriving in steady succession. Aunt Linda and Uncle George pulled up in their old Subaru, Linda's eyes already misty as she stepped out. Uncle Paul's truck came next, David riding in the passenger seat, looking nervous until I walked over and hugged him. I'm really glad you came, I told him quietly. He nodded, his voice rough. Thanks for inviting me. Not everyone does anymore. Natalie arrived with her husband and their 3 children, who immediately gravitated toward Theo. My father and Helen were the last to arrive, Dad stepping out of his car with a huge grin, carrying a box of books Helen had wrapped for everyone. There's my girl, he said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like his old cologne and wood smoke. You did good, Caroline. Real good. Inside, the house came alive with voices and laughter. Kids ran between rooms, adults gathered by the fireplace with glasses of wine, and Cole's guitar music drifted through the open windows. Aunt Ruth sat in the wingback chair near the fire, holding court with stories about Christmases from 50 years ago that had everyone listening intently. I moved through the rooms, making sure everyone had what they needed, refilling drinks, answering questions about the house. Every time I looked around, I saw faces that were relaxed, genuine, happy. No one was performing. No one was trying to impress anyone else. They were just present. At 2:30, my phone rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen. I stepped out onto the back porch, the cold air biting at my face, and answered. Mom. Caroline, this has gone far enough. Her voice was sharp, clipped. Half the family is at your house. Do you realize how this looks? I kept my voice level. It looks like I'm having Christmas dinner with people I love. You're being spiteful. This is about punishing me. This isn't about you at all, I said, and I meant it. This is about creating something different. Something that doesn't revolve around one person's idea of who deserves attention. I have never played favorites, she said, her voice rising. I have always treated you and Ryan equally. The lie hung in the air between us, so obvious it almost made me laugh. But I didn't have the energy to argue with her delusions anymore. Mom, I need to go. My guests are here. Your guests? Caroline, these are family members you've turned against me. I didn't turn anyone against you. I just gave them somewhere else to go when you made it clear they weren't welcome at your table. Before she could respond, I heard a voice in the background. Ryan. Let me talk to her. There was a shuffling sound, then Ryan's voice came through, tight with anger. You know what you're doing, right? You're destroying this family. I'm not destroying anything, I said calmly. I'm having Christmas dinner. You're having a party specifically to make Mom look bad. To get back at her because you've always been jealous that I'm more successful. Something in me snapped, not into anger, but into absolute clarity. Ryan, I own a house on 15 acres that I bought with cash. I have a successful art career. I'm raising an incredible kid by myself. I don't need to be jealous of you. I just needed to stop waiting for Mom to see me. He was quiet for a moment. You bought this place with cash? Yes. Another pause. How much land? 15 acres. I could almost hear him recalculating, trying to figure out how I'd managed something he didn't know about, something he couldn't compare to or compete with. It was the first time in my life I'd said something that left him without a response. Look, I said, my voice softening slightly. You have the Christmas you want with Mom. I'm having the one I want here. We can both exist, Ryan. This doesn't have to be a competition. Everything's a competition with you, he muttered. No, I said quietly. Everything's a competition with Mom. I just stopped playing. I hung up before he could argue, my hands shaking slightly but my chest feeling lighter than it had in years. When I walked back inside, Jessica was standing in the hallway, clearly having heard at least part of the conversation through the window. You okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah. I really am. She squeezed my shoulder. Good. Because Aunt Linda is about to make a toast, and I think you should be there for it. In the great room, everyone had gathered, glasses raised. Aunt Linda stood near the fireplace, her cheeks flushed from wine and warmth, her eyes bright. I want to say something, she announced, and the room quieted. I'm 72 years old, and I've been going to family Christmas dinners for more years than I can count. And I have never, not once, felt as welcome and valued as I do right here, right now. Several people murmured in agreement. Uncle George wrapped his arm around her waist. Caroline, Aunt Linda continued, turning to look at me directly. You did something extraordinary. You didn't just open your home. You opened your heart. You reminded all of us what family is supposed to feel like. Not perfect, not performed, just real. She raised her glass higher. To Caroline. And to the family we choose. To Caroline, everyone echoed, and I felt my eyes burning with tears I didn't try to hide. Theo appeared at my side, slipping his small hand into mine. Mama, everyone's so happy here. I knelt down to his level, brushing his hair back from his forehead. That's because everyone here wants to be here, buddy. No one's pretending. He thought about that for a moment, then hugged me tight. I like this Christmas better. Me too, baby. Me too. Dinner was served at 4 o'clock, the massive table crowded with platters of food and surrounded by faces glowing in candlelight. I sat at the head of the table, Theo on my right, my father on my left. As we passed dishes and filled plates, conversation flowed naturally, easily. David talked about his new job in construction. Natalie's kids told elaborate stories about their school play. Jessica and I reminisced about childhood summers at the lake. No one mentioned my mother. No one brought up Ryan. It was as if, for these few hours, we'd all been released from the exhausting work of orbiting around someone else's sun. My phone buzzed several more times during dinner, but I didn't look at it. Whatever my mother or Ryan had to say could wait. This moment, these people, this table I'd built, that was what mattered. After dinner, as Cole played Silent Night on the porch and kids roasted marshmallows by the fire pit, Jessica found me in the kitchen helping Simone pack up. "You know this changes everything, right?" she said quietly. I looked at her. "What do you mean?" "I mean, after today, we're not going back. Not to the old way. We're going to want this every year. You've shown us what's possible." I smiled, feeling something settle deep in my chest. Good. Because I want it too. Later that night, after everyone had gone home or settled into their bedrooms, I stood alone in the great room. The fire had burned down to embers, casting a soft orange glow across the wooden floors. I picked up my phone and finally looked at the messages. 12 missed calls. 9 text messages. All from my mother and Ryan. The most recent one, sent 20 minutes ago, was from my mother. "You've made your point. Can we please talk about this like adults?" I typed slowly, carefully. "There's nothing to talk about right now. I hope you had a nice Christmas with Ryan's family. We had a beautiful one here." I hit send, then turned off my phone completely. Tomorrow there would be more conversations, more confrontations, more fallout. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in the quiet of my own home, in the aftermath of a perfect day, and feel what it was like to finally, truly, be enough. The day after Christmas, the farmhouse felt different. Not empty, exactly, but peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced before. Most of the family had left early that morning, heading back to their regular lives, but a few had stayed behind. Jessica and her family were still asleep upstairs. Aunt Linda and Uncle George were having coffee on the front porch, wrapped in blankets against the cold. My father and Helen were taking a walk around the property, their footprints creating fresh trails in the snow. Theo was building a fort out of couch cushions in the great room, and I sat by the window with my own coffee, watching the morning light spread across the valley. My phone, which I'd turned back on an hour ago, had been mercifully quiet. Until it wasn't. A text from my mother: "We need to talk. In person. Today." I stared at those words for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let the silence stretch out indefinitely, to simply exist in this new reality I'd created without needing to explain or justify it. But another part of me, the part that had carried her disappointment for 34 years, knew that some conversations couldn't be avoided forever. I texted back, "Fine. Come to Harmony Ridge. 2 o'clock. Her response came immediately: "I'm not driving 2 hours. Meet me halfway." I almost laughed. Even now, even after everything, she wanted me to accommodate her, to make it easier for her, to come to her. But I was done meeting her halfway in every sense of the phrase. "No," I typed. "If you want to talk, you come here. These are my terms." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Fine. I'll be there at 2. Jessica came downstairs around noon, her hair still messy from sleep, and found me pacing the kitchen. "What's wrong?" she asked, pouring herself coffee. "My mom's coming. She wants to talk." Jessica's eyebrows shot up. "Here? She's coming here?" I nodded. "In 2 hours. Do you want me to stay? Moral support?" I thought about it, then shook my head. No. This is something I need to do alone. Well, with my dad here. But I don't want a whole audience. Okay, Jessica said, squeezing my arm. But if you need me, I'm one phone call away. And Caroline? Don't let her make you feel guilty. You didn't do anything wrong. By 1:30, Jessica's family had packed up and left, with promises to do this again next year. Aunt Linda and Uncle George followed shortly after, Aunt Linda hugging me tight and whispering, "Stand your ground, sweetheart. You've earned it." At exactly 2 o'clock, my mother's silver Mercedes pulled up the driveway. She stepped out, her coat perfectly tailored, her hair styled exactly as always, her face composed in that expression I knew so well, controlled disappointment mixed with determination. My father appeared at my side. "Want me there?" "Yes," I said quietly. "I really do." We met her on the front porch. She looked around at the property, at the farmhouse, at the barn in the distance, and I saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, maybe. Or realization. "So this is where you've been hiding," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "I haven't been hiding. I've been building," I replied. "Come inside. It's cold." We sat in the great room, the three of us forming an awkward triangle. My mother on the sofa, my father and I in chairs across from her. Theo was upstairs in his room, and I was grateful for that. Whatever was about to happen, he didn't need to witness it. My mother was the first to speak. "I want to understand why you did this. Why you felt the need to create this division in the family." "I didn't create division," I said, keeping my voice level. "I created an alternative. There's a difference. You invited everyone except Ryan and me. How is that not divisive?" My father leaned forward. "Dorothy, you uninvited everyone except Ryan. Caroline just gave them somewhere else to go." She turned to him, her jaw tight. "This doesn't concern you, James. This is between me and my daughter." "It concerns me when my daughter is being blamed for your choices," he said calmly. "You excluded her and Theo from Christmas. What did you expect her to do? Sit home alone?" My mother's composure cracked slightly. "I didn't exclude her. I just wanted one quiet Christmas with Ryan's family." "Is that so terrible? After everything I've done, raising 2 children, working full-time, managing a household, don't I deserve to have the Christmas I want?" "Of course you do," I said. "But so do I. And so does everyone else you uninvited." "That's all I did, Mom. I had the Christmas I wanted, with people who wanted to be there." "You did it to hurt me," she said, her voice harder now. "You did it to embarrass me. Half the family was here instead of with me, and you posted pictures everywhere. Everyone's talking about it." There it was. The real issue. Not that I'd gathered the family, but that people were talking. That her image, her carefully constructed narrative of the perfect family, had been disrupted. "I posted pictures because I was happy," I said. "Because it was a beautiful day. Not everything I do is about you." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "You don't understand what it's like, Caroline. You've always been so sensitive, so quick to take offense. Ryan never complains about favoritism. He never accuses me of not loving him enough. Because you've never given him a reason to," I said quietly. "Ryan has never had to wonder if he's enough. He's never had to watch you dismiss his accomplishments while celebrating someone else's. He's never had to feel invisible in his own family." My mother turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw a real emotion breaking through her careful mask. Anger, yes, but something else underneath. Something that looked almost like pain. "I have always loved you," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Maybe I didn't show it the way you needed, but I did. I do." "Then why wasn't that enough to include us in Christmas?" I asked. "Why wasn't Theo enough?" "He's 8 years old, Mom. He made you a card with his own hands. He's been asking about you for weeks. And you excluded him without a second thought. She was quiet for a long moment, her hands gripping the back of the chair. I didn't think about it that way. That's the problem, I said, standing up to face her. You never do. You never think about how your choices affect anyone except Ryan. And I'm tired of waiting for you to see me. I'm tired of teaching my son that it's okay to accept crumbs of affection from people who should love us unconditionally. So what are you saying? She asked, her voice small now. That you're done with me? That you're cutting me out of your life? I took a deep breath, feeling my father's steady presence beside me. I'm saying that things need to change. I'm not going to keep showing up to tables where I'm not wanted. I'm not going to keep exposing Theo to the same treatment I received. If you want to be part of our lives, really part of our lives, then you need to show up. Actually show up. Not just for photos or when it's convenient, but because you want to be there. And if I can't? She asked, and there was something vulnerable in her voice I'd never heard before. If I don't know how? Then I guess you'll miss out, I said, and I felt the weight of those words settle between us. Because I'm done shrinking myself to fit into your idea of who I should be. I've built a good life, Mom. A really good life. And you don't even know it because you've never bothered to ask. My mother looked around the room again, really looked this time, taking in the artwork on the walls, the beautiful furniture, the high ceilings and custom details. How did you afford all this? I'm an artist. A successful one. I've had work in galleries across the country. I've done major commissions. I make a very good living doing what I love. She blinked, processing this information. I didn't know. I know you didn't. Because you never asked. You were too busy talking about Ryan to notice what I was doing. My father stood up, moving to stand beside me. Dorothy, I'm going to say something I should have said years ago. The way you've treated Caroline isn't okay. It's never been okay. And if you can't see that, if you can't acknowledge the damage you've done, then you're going to lose her. Completely. My mother's face crumpled, and for the first time in my life, I saw her cry. Real tears, not the delicate dabbing she did at weddings or funerals, but actual sobs that shook her shoulders. I didn't mean to, she said through her tears. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. Ryan was he was easier. He fit the mold I understood. And you were always so different, so independent. I didn't know how to connect with you. I felt something shift inside me, not forgiveness exactly, but a softening. A recognition that she was human, flawed, limited in ways she'd probably never fully overcome. Mom, I said gently. I needed you to try. That's all I ever needed. For you to try to understand me instead of wishing I was more like Ryan. She nodded, wiping her eyes with her hands. Can we start over? Can I try now? I looked at my father, who gave me a slight nod, then back at my mother. I don't know if we can start over. But maybe we can start differently. If you're willing to actually show up, to see me and Theo for who we are, then maybe we can build something new. I want to, she said. I really do. Then start by coming to dinner next week. Just you. Here. Let me show you my life, my work, who I actually am. And bring your curiosity, not your comparisons. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. Yes. I can do that. We didn't hug. The wounds were too fresh, the years of hurt too heavy to dissolve in a single conversation. But as she left, driving slowly back down the gravel driveway, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel, hope. Small, fragile, but real. My father put his arm around my shoulders. You did good, Caroline. Really good. Think she'll actually change? I asked. I don't know, he said honestly. But you gave her the chance. And more importantly, you set boundaries. Whatever happens now, you've made it clear what you need. That's all you can do. That evening, after my father and Helen had left, after Theo was asleep, I walked out to the barn studio. I pulled out a fresh canvas, something I hadn't done in weeks, and started painting. Not for a commission, not for a gallery, just for me. I painted the dinner table from Christmas, surrounded by faces glowing with candlelight. I painted Aunt Linda raising her glass. I painted Theo laughing with his cousins. I painted the family I'd chosen, the table I'd built, the life I'd created on my own terms. And as I worked, I realized something profound. I didn't need my mother's approval anymore. I didn't need her to see me, because I already saw myself. I knew my worth. I knew what I'd built and who I'd become. If she chose to be part of that, genuinely part of it, then I would welcome her with open arms and clear boundaries. But if she couldn't, if she remained trapped in her old patterns, then I would be okay. More than okay. Because I had built my own table. I had filled it with people who chose to be there, who valued each other, who knew what family truly meant. And that table would always have a seat for anyone who understood that being seen, being valued, being enough exactly as you are, that's what Christmas, what family, what love is supposed to feel like. I stood back from the painting, brush in hand, and smiled. Next year, the table would be even bigger. The gathering even warmer. The tradition even stronger. And I would be right there at the head of it, no longer the forgotten daughter, but the architect of something beautiful. Something real. Something mine. For the first time in my life, that was enough. Got 2 more amazing stories lined up for you. If you dug this one, you're gonna love what's next. Go ahead and click.